So this is what I used to do as a storyboard artist working in animation. And this is now what I do as a freelance slash entrepreneur slash independent artist. At the end of the day, I feel like pursuing either path has its pros and cons, but depending on the state of how our world is going, sometimes some paths make better sense to go on than others. Because I used to work in animation, but for the past year and a half now, I've kind of just been doing my own thing. And I think with this era of AI and all these job layoffs and just uncertainty in the art and entertainment industry, people are starting to search for other options, and I think having a backup plan is never a bad idea. So in this video, I'm going to focus more on making that transition from a full-time art job to working independently. I will first and foremost say that I never am the type of person to believe in just quitting your job cold turkey and then just doing your own thing. I think that it is a story that maybe can work for some people, but I don't think everyone should just suddenly cut off their source of income and then start doing their own thing, only to then get distracted by the lack of income, and then it obliterates their whole plan to do their own thing. So I personally believe you should use your full-time job as a way of building your financial runway, and if you are lucky enough to already be working a full-time job in the art world, use it as your place to still gather connections, gain some experience. You could probably learn something from that work pipeline, and then when you're at a place where it makes sense to go full-time doing your own thing, like maybe your job ended up laying you off, it came to an end, or it just got to a place where it was more toxic for you and your mindset that you just have to leave, that's when I think you should leave. But otherwise, maybe the only other time would be if you already don't have a full-time job and you have nothing else going for you and you have nothing else left to lose. Then you can just go full force in doing your own thing. But if you are an artist right now that is currently employed and working and you got that steady paycheck, I would really encourage you to just keep going at it and develop those savings so that when it comes time for you to do your own thing, because let me tell you, I think that day will still come eventually, you won't have to be distracted by your finances. I know for some people, time may also be a factor for them, so it really depends on you and how comfortable you feel like cutting yourself off from your full-time job. So everyone's circumstances will be different, and I just trust you will do whatever is best for you. But before we dive in too deep, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, AkiFlow. AkiFlow is a time blocking tool that can help people stay more organized and productive. Instead of replacing things like Google Calendar, it actually works together with your Google Calendar, Gmail, and a range of other productivity apps. So with the inbox tool, you can pretty much assign your emails to tasks you can schedule throughout the week, but I personally like to just brain dump all that I need to do throughout the week, assign a project it's related to via the hashtag option, and then drop them in my calendar. These tasks then reflect on your Google Calendar as well, and as you complete the tasks, they then show up as completed on your Google Calendar, basically like a digital calendar and a to-do list all in one. You can color code your tasks and then move them with ease if you can't complete it the same day. There's also a daily planning option that shows your list of things to do that day, and a daily shutdown you can look at the end of the day to know what you'll have to do for the next. You can even use the command bar to directly make a task, and if you have any questions, you can always message or reach out to the AkiFlow team. You can then look at the statistics tool to see how you spend your time if you ever need to reflect or reevaluate how you're doing things. So give AkiFlow a try. Get 30% off for 12 months by heading to akiflow.com/mutripled down in the links below. And thanks to AkiFlow for sponsoring today's video. One of the first things I did while I was still working a full-time job in animation was treat doing comics on Instagram like my extracurricular. Like, I wasn't forcing myself to do this full-fledged project. It was just very casual, diary-esque comics that I would post on Instagram maybe 1 to 2 times a week. And I would just do them during my lunch breaks at work and after the work day. I also treated my comics in a very monochromatic manner. I only used one shade of pink at that time, and I also kept my lines very sketchy, so it's not like I was creating finished artwork every week. During this time, I would still work in animation, I made connections, I really formed relationships with my coworkers, and I always think that while you're working your full-time job, you should see what are the skills that are the most transferable from your full-time job to your eventual thing that you want to do on your own. For me, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do at the end of the day, but I just knew I wanted to have a project that was based off of my own ideas, and with that is art and storytelling. So I knew that maybe comics could be a path, maybe either directing or running my own project could be its own path. Something that was just in that sphere I knew was something I wanted to do, and there were a lot of things as a storyboard artist I could still learn from. So I learned from my more experienced coworker storyboard artists. I would still really try to improve my pitches and storyboards and learn from other people at the studios. I did not take my time for granted and would still take my job as a storyboard artist very seriously. Second, after some time working in animation while also doing comics, I knew things were getting a little bit serious, especially when I started getting reached out to by other companies for collaborations, and even an editor from Penguin Random House who ended up becoming the editor for MEESH the Bad Demon. And that's when I knew that what I was doing on the side was actually starting to be taken seriously. Once you start getting reached out to by people is when you know that maybe what you're doing is heading in some sort of direction. Because let me tell you, during this time where there's nothing going on in animation, the creator economy and also the publishing space are the only places where I still feel like there is some sort of openness to new ideas coming in that direction. Right now, the animation space seems very limited to only taking on projects with the least amount of risk, but the creator space and publishing space still feels like they have room for that. And that's where I think that new ideas and pitching ideas are still welcomed, and you can still find your way back in the animation world via the publishing space and creator economy. I would encourage you to not really let go of those people who reach out to you on the side, because at the time it might just sound like a side hustle or just a thing you do on the side. But let me tell you, those people will be more key players in your life the moment that your full-time job lets you go or just decides that they don't want you anymore. And even if you might think like, oh, but I think my full-time job will keep me forever, I will just tell you now, I think that our world is full of uncertainty. You just never know what's going to happen. So if you are still working a full-time job, you probably will have moments where maybe your job is less demanding, or maybe you do get let go. During those times where your full-time job is not really doing anything for you, I will say that is the time to go ham on those sponsors, collaborators, clients who are reaching out to you from the sidelines. During my times as a storyboard artist where I enter hiatus periods, the ways that I always supported myself was leaning into my YouTube, my Instagram, or my graphic novels even more than I was working a full-time job. That is your time to treat all those side hustles like your full-time job. So when I would say you can at least make that leap of faith and maybe quit your job or maybe no longer really need your full-time job is when all of your side hustles can cumulatively make at least 75% of what you were making at your full-time job.
This is also under the assumption that the full-time job you're working at that time is enough to be a livable income and not like $5. Like obviously if your full-time job was just making you $5 and 75% of $5 is obviously not going to let you live a comfortable life. So this is really for people who've been working a full-time job and that salary has been able to support their lifestyle, then 75% of that probably will still allow you to get by, assuming you have enough savings and the willingness to eventually scale that 75%.
The reason why I say this is because I think it's unrealistic to think that all of your side hustles can just make the amount that you were making at your full-time job while you were spending your time working your full-time job and doing your side hustles, because you don't really have the time to scale what you were doing on the side when you were doing your full-time job at the same time. But I think when you can reach a point where you are making at least 75% of what you were doing at your full-time job on your own, that is a sign that what you are doing on the side actually has some traction, and maybe it could actually be a full-time thing. But only if you had that extra time outside of your full-time job. You could be scaling that shit and maybe even making more money than your full-time job. So starting last year in March/April, that was the last time I ever worked as a storyboard artist in the animation industry, because at that time my project wrapped up. So for me, it's not like I really made the decision to take the leap of faith, but because I was already not working a full-time job and I've already had all of these seeds planted, I was like, now is your time to grow into the plants that you said you were going to grow into. And now that I have collected my database of what has been working for me and what hasn't, I can now reevaluate all of this and then decide what I am going to scale moving forward. So that is kind of how I have been using my thought process this whole time for the past 6 years. And this is not to say that I wouldn't work in animation again, by the way. I still have my door open to work in animation. Like literally, look, that is my door. It is still open to working in animation. But for as long as nothing is going through that door, I'm just gonna be here doing my own thing. I think a lot of artists used to think like I need to be this like well-known, notable director, author, this grand title, because we think that those titles will grant us that comfortability of being financially well and living the lives that we want to. But you can still be financially well and do the things that you want to as an artist without always needing to be like this established veteran artist. And if you think about it, all of those established veteran artists are a lot older than us, and it took them time to get to where they need to be. It's also going to take us time to be where we need to be. Like, we are still blessed with the privilege of youth right now, so we are in an era where we can still do a lot of things with maybe a lot less risk. So take those risks while you can. We'll see you all in the next one.